Hi, everybody. My name is Nanika Edwards, and I'm a creative from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. In today's video, I'd like to briefly explore chapter 1 of Genesis, in which the Bible describes the creation of the universe and especially of planet Earth. And I'd like to use chapter 1 to highlight some principles of creativity. I think that creativity is a topic that interests a lot of people, but it's also something that is also often misunderstood. So let's get right into this. By the way, I would encourage you to check out chapter 1 for yourself. You can refer to a Bible resource like Bible Gateway, which you can find online, and just choose a Bible like maybe the New King James Version or the New International Version or the NLT, the New Living Translation. I think those are really those are modern versions that are easy to understand, and I would recommend modern versions such as those as opposed to the King James Version, which uses very archaic language. So you can check out Genesis 1 for yourself, and I'm sure that you would be able to see exactly what I'm going to be sharing with you. Okay, so Genesis 1 illustrates that true creativity, as opposed to a false concept of creativity, right? So Genesis 1 illustrates that true creativity is practical and purposeful. So we see in Genesis 1 that as God created things, He named them, and sometimes He would tell us exactly what they were created for. So everything that God created has a purpose, and that includes people, both on a collective level and also on an individual level. So, as a race, we have a purpose. As a family of kindred groups, we have a purpose. But then individually, we also have a purpose. And our purpose in life should be to pursue what God has put us on planet Earth to do. And it's up to each one of us to get close enough to God to hear from Him ourselves why He's put us on planet Earth. And I'd also like to add to that for anybody who finds themselves existing at this point in time, in this place, please know that you're a very special purpose, because this is an epic time in the course of human history. And anybody born in this time should know that you are definitely not a mistake. This is a critical, pivotal point in human history. You are not a mistake. I encourage you, please discover what your purpose is in God. Get close enough to God to find out what that is. Okay, so Genesis 1 also illustrates that true creativity is sequential and logical. It is orderly, not frenetic. We see a great deal of order as God went from day 1 to day 2 to day 3. And also, we see that nothing was created in a way that didn't make sense. Like plants were created before animals, for example. The animals needed the plants for food, so the plants came first. You understand? So it was sequential, it was logical, it was orderly. Genesis 1 also illustrates that true creativity is prolific and imaginative. True creativity is simplicity patterned with complexity. A lot of people mistakenly think that true creativity has to be complex. But no, the essence of creativity is usually simplicity. And layered around that simplicity, you can have all kinds of complex ideas. But think about it like this: most things can be reduced to a single atomic structure. You think about that things can be reduced to a very simple level. And essentially, creativity is like that. True creativity at its core is not complex, but simple. That's why some of the best solutions to a problem are very, very simple. Okay? Genesis 1 illustrates that true creativity is in many different fields, in the arts, in science, in math. We see all of these different fields and more encapsulated within Genesis 1. So very often people think that creativity is only an artistic thing. But no, creativity can transcend different fields of pursuit. So the arts, science, math, architecture, all kinds of different things, we can, in these areas, express creativity. I do believe, though, that true creativity is especially artistic. When we look at Genesis 1 and we see the masterpiece that God made of creation, that the masterpiece that God made of the entire universe, we understand that creativity truly is mainly an artistic thing, but like I've already mentioned, it's not solely artistic. True creativity is first appraised self objectively. Every time that God completed a particular phase of his creation project, he would say, "It is good." And he said this happily, in great contentment, great self satisfaction, in a good way. And he appraised his own work. So every creative is supposed to be able to objectively appraise their own work even before somebody else appraises it. And we have to be objective about it. Genesis 1 illustrates that true creativity is a process that crescendos. And why did I use the word crescendo? It's because many people may not know this, but Genesis 1 is the very first poem ever created. We see real structure going from day 1 to day 2 to day 3, right down to day 6, and then, of course, day 7 when God rested. We see a process, right? And then it's a poem. It's all described in poetic form. We see, how do I know that? Because Genesis 1 has a very clear structure that could be easily seen as a poem. But personally, knowing God and how much He loves music and song and the arts, I personally believe that Genesis 1 probably unfurled against the backdrop of something of an orchestral nature. I believe that there was an orchestral accompaniment to God working out the drama of bringing the universe into existence. I believe that it was a very theatrical, dramatic kind of experience. That's just me. Genesis 1 doesn't say that explicitly, but that's what I believe. And it's a process that crescendos. Creativity is a process that crescendos. So God went from day 1 right up to day 6. And on day 6, He created the crowning moment of His whole artistic project, if we could put it like that. And He created man. So the process crescendoed with the creation of man. And I think most creatives can relate to this. You know, you start off with the seed of an idea, you gradually build it out until you get to the point where you say, yeah, this is exactly the way that I want it. And there's a certain degree of a building up of things, right? And when you get to the point where it crescendos, you feel like, yeah, this is exactly the way that I want it to be. This is perfect. So that's what I mean by it. True creativity is a process that crescendos. Genesis 1 also illustrates that true creativity is magical and mysterious. I usually try to tell people that creativity is not really magical and mysterious, but to be honest, there's a certain degree of magic and mystery to creativity. I think any creative who's really being honest or brutally honest would have to say that they really don't fully understand where their creative thoughts come from. People talk about having a muse and, having these sparks of inspiration. There's something about true creativity that seems magical and mysterious because it comes ultimately, if it's good creativity, it comes from the heart, the mind, the soul of God. Oh, by the way, the reason why I steer clear of saying that creativity is magical and mysterious is because sometimes people start thinking that they can't be creative unless there's some magic and mystery behind it. And that's not true. Sometimes you can literally sit down and plan out your creative process the way you would an essay, the way you would a book project. You can literally sit, for example, I've had many poems that I've written. I'm a poet, among other things. There a number of times when I have sat down and literally planned out a poem before I wrote it without any um, extra inspiration, so to speak. The inspiration was simply in me logically sitting down and working out exactly how I was going to pen something. So creativity is not always magical and mysterious, and people should not feel confined by that definition of creativity. Genesis 1 also illustrates that true creativity is aesthetically pleasing, right? So you have true creativity, you have false creativity, I do believe, if I could put it like that. True creativity is aesthetically pleasing. Even if it's dark, it can be aesthetically pleasing. Genesis 1 also illustrates that true creativity is full of laws and principles. So often I would hear people say, when you make a work of art, when you produce something artistic, as long as it came from your heart, it's beautiful, it's art, it doesn't matter how you do it. It does matter. It does matter because even for the arts, which seem like a anything goes kind of field, there are laws and principles. Just like laws and principles were encoded into the very matter that God created, because He is a God of law, order, principles, boundaries, definition, things like that. In the same way, the things that He created, even things that seem intangible on a certain level, like the arts, science, math, they are full of laws and principles. Therefore, it is very wrong, it's very flawed to look at a piece of art that's horrible and say, oh, it's wonderful because it came from their heart. It is a work of original thought, so it has to be beautiful art and something that anything can be defined as art. Yes, anything can be defined as art, but not everything can be defined as good art, right? So please let's not get that mixed up. All right, continuing on. Genesis 1 illustrates that true creativity is enlightening. Yup, the very first thing that God created was light. Let there be light. And I do believe that the implication, if the Bible is multi-layered, so you can look at everything on so many different levels. But within the context of our conversation about creativity, we could say that everything is designed to honor God, right? And no, God doesn't do that in a prideful, kind of human pride kind of way. He is God, and He is worthy of honor, praise, adoration, which is what He created human beings to do. We're designed to honor God, not only with our mouths, verbally, but with the choices that we make in life, especially the choice to walk with God and to follow God. The Bible says that even if we don't do that, the rocks will cry out and praise and worship God. But back to my point, true creativity is enlightening. And again, we can go back to let there be light, right? That's the first thing that God said. And I do believe that anything we create, whether it's very profound or whether it's entertaining or whatever it is designed to give light. It is designed to enlighten, whether that means giving joy, because joy is a kind of light. You know, when you're around somebody who's joyful, you feel like you're around sunshine. But then it could be that something is very profound and it's teaching us some useful or deep principle. It doesn't have to be deep to be useful, but you know, we could create something that teaches, that edifies, that challenges in a positive way. All of that is enlightening. Genesis 1 illustrates that true creativity is masterful. God looked at what He had done and He said, "It is good." Why? Because He created it masterfully. Genesis 1 illustrates that true creativity is creating something new, something that didn't exist before, something original. That's a real definition of creativity, which is why plagiarism, copycatting, they cannot really be defined as creativity. Genesis 1 illustrates that true creativity is a gift that we all have. Sometimes, as human beings, by the time we get to a certain age, usually our 20s, we think we convince ourselves that we are not creative. But that is not true because God created man in His image and likeness. The only beings in the universe, as far as we know, created in His image and likeness. And what's the first thing we learn about God? As Myron Golden, whom I follow on social media, has so rightfully put it, the first thing we learn about God is not that He's all knowing or that He is all powerful. The first thing that we learn about God is that He is creative, and He made us in His image and likeness. That's why we cannot be fully fulfilled unless we are being creative, and we all have the gift of creativity. It is true that the education system neutralizes that gift. The education system typically tends to erode our creativity, you know, our kiddie creativity, but it is something that can be rekindled. It is something that can be rekindled. I don't know if you're hearing my fridge coming on there, but creativity is something that can be rekindled. And so I would encourage you, go check out Genesis chapter 1. As a matter of fact, check out the whole Bible. I would encourage you, read the entire Bible. You know, challenge your assumptions and presumptions about the Bible. The Bible is such an intelligent, enlightening, wise, profound, entertaining book. But it's beyond entertaining. It is a life manual. And it is a manual that teaches us how to interact with the God who created us, to walk in friendship with Him, just like Adam walked with Him in friendship in the Garden of Eden. So that's it, Genesis 1, and how it illustrates what true creativity is. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you did, thank you for giving it a thumbs up, and I would love to hear your comments. Please feel free to share them in the comments section. What are your thoughts on creativity? What do you think true creativity is? Do you think that Genesis 1 got it right? All right, so that's it. Until next time. Over and out for now.